I left her to die in the forest. Weeks later, she came back, and what she brought with her still makes my hands shake. When I saw her lying there in the thin morning light, her flank heaving with ragged breaths, my heart slammed against my ribs because I realized she was not afraid. I froze, rifle still warm in my hands, as that wounded lynx met my gaze with eyes too steady for one so hurt. Her tawny fur was matted with blood and dirt. Her paw was twisted beneath her, a broken angle that should have sent her into terrified flight. But she stayed. She watched me, and I watched her. My lungs burned with shock. I lowered my rifle slowly, too slowly to be sure of anything. The forest around us held its breath. Every bird and branch seemed to wait. She blinked once, her eyes locked onto mine again. There was a strange intelligence there, a recognition. I swallowed hard, tasting pine and fear. I should have taken aim. I should have ended her suffering quickly, but I could not. I could not look away. Each labored exhale from her chest made my own breath catch. Time stretched. I knelt on the fallen leaves and hewn bark. My hands trembled. I told myself I was a hunter. I had seen death before, but never like this. She lay so still, yet so alive. There was no tremor of panic in her body, only pain and wonder. We were strangers, yet in that instant our lives became interwoven. Something ancient clicked inside me. I felt it in my bones. All the lessons I thought I'd learned about the wild shattered. I was not the master here. She was not the prey. She was something else. I whispered her name, though I did not know what it was. "Easy now," I said, voice thick with disbelief. She did not flinch. She only watched. I closed my eyes for a moment, tasting tears I refused to let fall. When I opened them again, she was still there, still looking at me. I stood, leaving my rifle by a fallen log. I reached out, almost touching her muzzle. I thought I could feel her pulse under her coarse fur. I considered gathering her in my arms, carrying her back to my cabin 3 miles from here, but instinct warned me against it. I would only chase her spirit back into terror. So I stepped away. I turned my back to the wounded lynx and walked. Every step felt heavier than the last. My boots sank into mud and leaves. My mind replayed her gaze over and over. I could still see the understanding in those amber eyes. I could still feel the shock in my chest. I convinced myself I had done the right thing. I convinced myself she would not survive the night. I told myself she would slip away quietly. I told myself I would forget this moment by morning. But I did not. I did not forget. I did not sleep. And I did not look back. I thought that was it. I thought that was the end. But I was wrong. In her eyes there was no fear, only understanding. And that was the most terrifying thing of all. When I first saw her, it was like waking from a dream into a sharper one. I was refilling the water trough by the edge of my property, the late afternoon sun slanting gold through the pines, when I sensed movement at the tree line. I turned, and there she stood, slender, silent, every muscle taut beneath her tawny coat. She had the same steady stare, the same unblinking focus as before, but now there was something else. Distance. My heart lurched. My breath caught in my throat. I froze mid-step, the metal bucket swinging in my hand. The lynx did not move. She simply watched me from where she'd paused, as if testing whether I was real. Then, almost imperceptibly, 2 small shapes emerged behind her, padded footsteps so soft I could barely hear them over my pounding pulse. 2 kits, barely big enough to clear her haunches, tumbled into the clearing. One pressed close to her side, nuzzling under her chin. The other investigated the fallen branches at her paws. I stood there, motionless, riveted by the sight. For weeks I had convinced myself she was gone forever, funeral woodland ceremony and all. I had whispered to the wind that she would not make it, that nature had decided, but there she was, healthy and strong, flanked by her young. I could not speak, could not move, could not breathe. My hands shook so badly I let the bucket clatter to the ground, water spilling across dead needles. The kits paused, looking up at me, innocent eyes reflecting fading daylight. She took a single step forward, no more than a pace, her eyes never leaving mine. Then she turned her head, as if offering her offspring a choice: come forward or stay hidden. The bolder kid obeyed, soft paws padding into the open. He stopped a few feet from me and sniffed the air, nostrils flaring. I swallowed, tasting copper and pine. My mind raced for explanations, wildlife corridors, instinct, miracle, but none of them fit. This was something beyond logic. I felt tears prickle behind my eyes. She straightened, tail flicking once. A sound, soft, almost inaudible, escaped her throat. I realized too late that it was a call, a summons. The second kit hesitated, then bounded after the first, emerging fully into view. They stood together, small and vulnerable, and yet astonishingly brave. The mother lynx held her ground, unwavering. I felt a tremor of guilt slice through me. I had walked away from her when she was broken. Here she was repaying my indifference by showing me her strength. My chest tightened, my vision blurred. I could not reconcile the hunter I had been with the witness I had become. She flicked her ears, as if reminding me of something I had long forgotten. With deliberate slowness, she lowered herself into a graceful crouch, nose almost brushing the ground. The kits mirrored her stance. In that moment, it was as if she was teaching them, teaching me about survival, about resilience, about the unspoken bonds that tie us all. I exhaled a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. I took a cautious step forward, but the mother shifted her weight and rose, stern in her command. "Stay back." I halted. I thought she was just passing through, a fleeting ghost of the wild. I thought she would vanish as quickly as she had appeared, leaving footprints behind and no more. But watching those three lynxes standing in a rough semicircle around me, I realized she had come back for a reason. She had come to show me something I had never imagined, that life could win where it was supposed to lose, that gratitude could flow in the direction of the predator, that memory was not the sole domain of human hearts. Her gaze softened, just for a heartbeat, and then she turned. The kits followed without a glance backward, slipping into the shadows of the forest. I watched them go, my throat tight, tears now spilling free. When the last kit disappeared, she paused at the edge of the clearing, tush flicking once, and looked at me one final time. In her eyes there was no anger, no fear, only recognition. She remembers, I thought, my voice a whisper in the hush of the pines. Then she melted into the woods, leaving me alone with the echo of her lesson and the undeniable proof that I had been wrong. "I thought she was just passing through," I murmured to the empty air, but she came back to show me she survived and that she was never truly alone. Again, I didn't see them coming. One clear morning, just after dawn, I stepped outside my cabin to fetch firewood and found her at the edge of the porch, Mother Lynx, flanked by her two kits, sleek shapes outlined by pale mist. They didn't bolt. They didn't skitter back into the trees. Instead, they regarded me with calm curiosity, as though I had always been part of their world. Over the next few days, they returned at dawn and dusk. I'd catch flashes of tawny fur slipping through the pines, then pause on the porch to find them watching from the mossy stones. No fear in their eyes, only that same unshakable intelligence. I began to leave scraps of venison at the cabin steps, small slivers of meat wrapped in leaves as though offering tribute to some royal court. Each morning, the food was gone. Then, on the fifth morning, the smaller kit ventured closer than I'd ever seen. He padded forward on delicate paws, ears tilted forward, nostrils quivering. I stood so still I thought I might merge with the cabin itself. He came within arm's reach, a small predator, but I was afraid like a child. Every instinct screamed at me to back away, to slam the door and hide behind walls of wood. Yet I stayed rooted, heart pounding. His mother sat a few yards back, alert but relaxed. The older kid fidgeted, glancing between mother and me, uncertain. I realized then that this wasn't about hunger. They were testing me. They wanted to know if I was friend or foe. For the first time since finding that wounded lynx, I understood. She had chosen me. I laid the venison shard on the worn boards and took a half step back. The small kit hesitated, sniffing the air, then seized the offering with kittenish greed. His jaws were gentle around the meat's edge, as though unsure how to handle something so precious. I exhaled, long and slow, relief coursing through my veins. They visited every day that week. In the fading light, I'd stand at the threshold, hands stuffed into my coat pockets to still the trembling. She never approached closer than 15 feet, but her kits came to within 5. One kit even brushed his flank against my boot once, warm fur brushing denim. I froze, breath stuck in my throat. Could such a wild thing truly trust me? Still, part of me balked at the thought of reward. I'd told myself I was no stranger to wildlife. I was the hunter turned hermit, immune to sentiment. I'd insisted this was coincidence, a curious run of luck or anomaly in animal behavior. I decided it was just coincidence, nothing more, a fleeting friendliness born of food. I would not let my heart be ensnared, but each morning, when I found empty plates and saw their shapes fading into the trees, I felt a pang of loss, like saying goodbye to a friend I'd barely met. I started marking days on the cabin door with notches, waiting for their return. One dawn, as mist curled around the pines, I dared to leave water in a shallow basin beside the meat. The mother drank carefully, graceful tongue lapping. The kits splashed wildly, dripping dew across the boards. I knelt nearby, heart hammering. They didn't flee, they didn't growl. They simply regarded me, as though granting me permission to share their world. That evening, I lit the lantern and sat on the porch, notebook open on my lap. I scribbled words I would never share. I am terrified and honored. I am alive in a way I never was before. In their eyes, I saw reflections of all I had tried to bury: guilt, wonder, regret. They brought them back, unbidden. When I finally rose to go inside, I heard a soft scrape on the doorframe. The small kit stood at the threshold, head cocked. He paused, sniffed my leg, then turned and bounded back to his mother. They melted into shadow, leaving me alone with my thundering chest and the echo of paws disappearing. I closed the door and leaned against the cool wood, tears stinging my eyes. I understood now that this bond, fragile as it was, had already changed me. I could no longer claim indifference. I could no longer pretend I was anything but humbled by their trust. And yet, I could not shake the thought that maybe, just maybe, I had imagined it all. Maybe the food had been the only reason they came. Maybe tomorrow they would not return. He came within arm's reach, a small predator, but I was afraid like a child. I turned out the lantern and waited, listening for the soft crack of a paw step I hoped would come again. I stepped out before sunrise, the chill of dawn biting through my coat. The forest was silent, too silent. A low growl shattered the stillness. My heart seized. I turned toward the sound and saw it. Silver fur bristling, teeth bared, eyes like shards of ice. A lone wolf crouched behind a fallen pine, its gaze fixed on me. I froze, every muscle locked in fear. My breath hitched in my throat. I knew the stories of wolves, silent hunters, ruthless shadows that slipped through the night. This one was no exception. He edged closer, growl rumbling deep in his chest. His hackles rose. My pulse pounded in my ears. I thought of my cabin miles away, safe behind locked doors. But I was alone here, Half a step closer, and he would strike. My legs trembled, my mind screamed to run, but my feet stayed rooted. The wolf snarled, low and threatening. His fangs glinted in the half-light. I raised my hands, trembling to appear larger, a futile gesture. His lips curled back, saliva dripped onto moss. I tasted copper in my mouth, my chest constricted. I was certain I would not see another sunrise. Then, from the shadows, a flash of tawny fur. A shape blurred past me. My shoulder brushed something soft and warm. My blood froze. I'd never seen her so fearless. The adolescent lynx stepped into the clearing. Her amber eyes met the wolf's icy stare. She crouched, spine arched, claws brushing the earth. She didn't snarl. She didn't hiss. She simply stood her ground. Between me and the predator, time seemed to slow. The wolf paused, ears swiveling toward his unexpected challenger. He studied her for a long moment. She held his gaze, unwavering. Then, without a sound, he took a step back. His growl faded. He turned and melted into the trees. I let out a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. My legs gave way beneath me, and I sank to the moss. The lynx, no bigger than a large dog, sidled up to me. She nudged my hand with her head, whiskers brushing my fingers. I managed a shaky laugh. Tears blurred my vision. I was sure that this was my last morning. The lynx blinked at me, amber eyes soft now. She pressed closer, as if checking I was still breathing. I reached out and gently stroked her flank. Her fur was coarse but warm. My hand shook, but she did not flinch. She simply allowed me this small comfort. I looked around, but the wolf was gone. Only the echo of his warning growl lingered in the damp air. I thought of all the mornings I had walked these woods alone, never once expecting to be protected, never once imagining a wild heart would risk itself for mine. She didn't growl, she just stood beside me. And that was enough. I sat there for a long time, leaning against a fallen log, with her head resting in my lap. The first light of dawn filtered through the branches, painting her fur in hues of gold. I felt a swell of gratitude so fierce it brought tears to my eyes. I stroked her head and whispered thanks I wasn't sure she understood. She purred, a sound so deep and unexpected that my ribs vibrated with its resonance. I closed my eyes, savoring the moment. The warmth of her body, the hush of the forest, the fragile peace we shared. When I finally stood, she slipped away into the trees without a backward glance. I watched until she vanished. Then I turned and walked home, boots sinking into frost-soft earth. Every step felt lighter than the last. I carried with me the memory of her courage and the knowledge that I was no longer entirely alone in these woods. And though I would tell myself later that it was just luck, that she was merely curious, I knew the truth in my bones. She came for me. I sit at my workbench long after the lantern's glow has faded, pencil hovering over rough paper, and wonder how any of this could be real. The lines I've sketched, the curve of her haunch, the tilt of her head, that impossible intelligence gleaming in her eyes, feel more vivid than anything I've ever lived. I've never believed in miracles, never believed that wild beasts could forge bonds with humans. All my life, I trusted only what I could see, what I could track, what I could hunt. Nature was a puzzle to solve, a territory to master. But now I stare at those half-finished strokes on my drawing pad and think, maybe I just didn't know how to look before. At night, sleep eludes me. The mattress creaks as I shift, and every shadow against the window becomes a tawny shape. I dream of amber eyes watching me from under fallen pines, of soft paws padding across frost-hardened earth. I wake with my heart hammering, convinced I hear a gentle nudge against the door. But in the cold dawn light, only emptiness greets me. I close my eyes and recall the first time she appeared that morning. The kits were gone, just her, slim and silent, stepping through the mist. I remember how my breath caught as she paused at the tree line, as if weighing me with her gaze. I trace her outline on the page, but the memory bleeds beyond the paper's edge. The weight of gratitude, the ache of guilt. I have never felt so alive and so guilty. Guilty for the way I abandoned her when she lay broken in the underbrush. Guilty that I believed her spirit was extinguished, only to discover it blazing brighter than ever. I wonder if she forgave me that day, or if she returned simply because the wild calls to its own, regardless of our failures. I run a hand through my hair and lean back, pencil tapping as I consider my life before the Lynx. Solitude was my refuge. Certainty was my comfort. I had read every wildlife journal, examined every behavior note, but I never understood that emotion could flow between species, that instinct could be steered by something like appreciation or wonder. The forest outside my window sighs with its usual rhythms, wind through needles, distant branch snaps, but to me it sings a new song, a hymn of reciprocity and respect. Each rustle now feels like a greeting, each footprint like a message. I set aside the drawing and rise, boots calling softly across the floor. I step outside, chest tight with the need to see, to listen, to feel. The world is cool and still, and I imagine her silhouette slipping among the trunks. I call her name in a whisper, unsure if I'm speaking to her or to my own heart. For a moment, nothing happens. Then a breeze stirs, carrying a scent I recognize, earth and pine and the faintest trace of wild fur. My pulse quickens. I thought I'd never see her again. My breath catches. I see movement at the edge of the clearing, the lynx emerging from shadows like a drawing come to life. She steps forward, each movement deliberate, her gaze fixed on me. Pride and vulnerability flicker across her face. I swallow and hold out my hand. No offering this time, just the silent plea of a man who has learned too late what matters. She stops a few yards away, body relaxed but ready. We hold that space between us, a chasm bridged by something deeper than words. I feel tears welling, and I dare to hope that she understands my remorse, my awe, my gratitude. She blinks once, as if forgiving me for the mistake I can never fully atone for. Then she turns and pads back toward the trees, disappearing into the living sketches of the wild. I stand alone in the dew-soaked grass, heart pounding, breath trembling. The forest exhales around me. I have never felt so alive and so guilty. I woke one morning to silence so deep, it felt like the forest had exhaled its last breath. Winter had draped everything in a heavy blanket of white, and the world seemed to hold its secrets beneath the frost. I stepped outside my cabin, expecting to see those familiar paw prints winding toward the porch, but there was nothing, only fresh snow unmarked, as if no living creature had passed this way for weeks. A hollow ache settled in my chest. For months, their visits had been the pulse in my life, the way the kits tumbled through the drifts, the mother's steady vigilance. Now the clearing was empty, the trough forgotten, the offerings of venison untouched. I wandered among the pine trunks, searching for signs, broken twigs, a smear of blood, a cluster of tracks, but found only pristine snow and my own footprints trailing behind me. My breath puffed in the cold air, and I traced a line of faint tracks near the old oak. I followed them, heart hammering, until they faded beneath a mound of fresh powder. I knelt and brushed snow away, half hoping to uncover a paw or a tuft of fur. Instead, I touched bare earth, cold and unyielding. My fingertips stung as if I had pressed against ice itself. When I stood, the forest felt further away than ever. That night, sleep offered no refuge. I was haunted by dreams of glowing eyes in the darkness. I saw her, Mother Lynx, lying broken as I had first found her, only now the wound was fresh again, crimson against white fur. The kits circled her, crying silent pleas I could not answer. I reached out to touch their fur, but every time my fingers came close, they passed through as though they were made of mist. I woke with tears frozen on my cheeks. In another dream, they appeared at the cabin door, 3 amber shapes framed by the lantern's glow. I opened my mouth to speak, but no sound emerged. They blinked at me, then melted back into the night, leaving only the echo of their vanished steps. I bolted upright in bed, heart pounding, convinced I was alone, and terrified that perhaps I truly was. All day I moved with my mind elsewhere, replaying their faces in every shadow. The forest called to me, but I hesitated at the edge of the clearing, afraid I would find nothing again. I remembered how it felt when she first returned with those 2 kits at her side. I remembered the weight of her gaze, the astonishment in her stance. I gripped the sleeve of my coat and whispered, "Where are you?" The forest answered only with the sigh of wind in bare branches. My journals, once filled with sketches of their shapes, now lay neglected on the desk. I opened to the pages and traced the lines of her powerful haunch, but the drawing seemed to mock me with its certainty. I closed the book and pushed it aside. Perhaps I had been foolish to believe it all, this miraculous tale of forgiveness and trust. Perhaps I had dreamed the whole thing. I went to the window, watching as snowflakes drifted down like pale confessions. I found myself longing for their return, for the soft thud of small paws on the porch, for the warmth of living fur against my leg. But each time I thought I heard a rustle, I would freeze, and nothing would follow but my own quickened breath. I tried to convince myself it was just a beautiful dream. I told my reflection in the window that the forest was too harsh for such tenderness, that wild hearts could not be tamed by scraps of meat or whispered apologies. I told myself I had imagined the kits, that the mother had been wounded long ago, lost to memory and myth. I said it over and over. It was just a dream. Yet at dusk, I found my boots already laced, my coat donned, as if summoned by hope. I stepped into the snow again and called her name aloud, Bella, though that was not her real name. I had given her that when I dared to believe. My voice cracked on the air, and I stood listening, chest tight. A branch snapped somewhere beyond the clearing, but it was just a deer bounding away in fear. I sank to my knees in the snow, face stinging with cold and tears. Sometimes I call her name aloud, just like that. I don't know why. I rose and walked back to the cabin, each footstep a fragile promise. I did not know if I would ever see them again. But as I closed the door against the wind, I felt the emptiness settle beside me, an ache I could not shake, a question that burned. Was their absence real, or had I lost the extraordinary piece of myself that believed in miracles? Spring arrived on silent pause. One morning, I stepped onto my porch, and there she was, alone, older, her coat dulled by time. She sat on the wooden boards as if born from the dawn mist itself. Not a leaf rustled, not a bird sang, just her, still and solemn. My breath caught. I froze mid-step. I thought I would never see her again. All the months of empty snow and hollow dreams flashed through me. I braced for the ache of loss one last time, but she did not vanish. She simply watched me from where she sat, her head tilted slightly, her eyes gentle but unruly with memory. I set down my coffee mug and slipped off my boots. The old wood creaked beneath my careful weight. I kept my distance, respecting the space between human and wild, yet every fiber of me ached to close it. I remember the first time I found her wounded. I remember the kits by her side. I remember the wolf and the kits that saved me. All of it poured into my chest like sunlight, and here she was again, as if summoned by those moments. I stepped forward. She did not flinch. She did not bolt. She remained perfectly still, as if honoring the weight of our shared history. I sank onto the top step, careful not to jostle the fragile silence. She blinked. I blinked back. Our eyes locked, and the years between us vanished. I whispered her name, though she no longer bore one. "Hello, old friend." No response, only the hush of spring around us. Memories spiraled. That first dawn when she returned with two tiny shapes at her side, the day the adolescent Lynx placed herself between me and death. The nights I lay awake, dreaming of their return, all the times I called into the forest, once in hope, once in despair, and now this moment, far more powerful than any before. I knew this was goodbye. I felt it in the soft tilt of her ears, in the centuries of wild wisdom reflected in her eyes. "I knew I would never see you again," I murmured. She stared, unblinking. The world held its breath. I rose slowly, the wood protesting underfoot. She did not rise. She did not move. She simply stayed, regal and resigned. I swallowed, voice choking. "You came back," I said. "You came to say goodbye." Her eyes softened. A single blink, the moment stretched and fractured. It felt as though the forest itself exhaled with her. She stood then, every muscle poised for departure. Her ribs moved beneath her coat. A breath, then another. She walked toward the edge of the porch and paused. I held my breath. I dared not blink. The distance between us was a riverbed, dry but still dangerous to cross. She turned her head once, looking back at me. Her gaze steady, unwavering. I realized then, this was her farewell. She walked down the steps, placing each paw with deliberate care. Her tail swept softly over the planks. With each step, she seemed to carry away a piece of my heart. When she reached the snow-melted path, she paused again. I thought my heart would stop. It was so silent. She lifted her head one last time. I felt the length of our bond in that single lift. Then she turned and slipped into the pines. I watched until the forest swallowed her form, until only the whisper of her passing remained. I stood alone on the porch, chest tight, tears thawing on my cheeks. The world seemed emptier, but somehow more alive. I understood then what she had taught me. Wildness is fleeting, trust is fragile, and miracles exist at the edge of fear. She came to say goodbye, and I understood it, without words. I never expected that a single series of encounters could unmake a lifetime of certainty. Yet here I stand, months after that spring morning when she came to bid farewell, and everything has shifted beneath my feet. I walk the forest paths now as a humbled guest rather than a confident master. Each snap of a twig, each rustle in the undergrowth feels like a whispered reminder of what I once overlooked. Before I found her wounded in the snow, before the kits appeared at my doorstep, I carried my rifle without a second thought. Hunting was my way of life, the rhythm of tracking, stalking, the precise pull of the trigger. I believed it was the natural order, predator and prey, life measured in the taking. But after I spared her, after I watched her two kits grow strong enough to protect me, something inside me cracked. I realized I could no longer look at a living creature and see only its value as game. I laid down my rifle that morning I first knelt beside her. I have never picked it up again. My fingers no longer crave the cool steel. Instead, they ache to trace the ridges of antlers and the soft tracks of paws. I keep journals now, simple notebooks where I record every sighting of bird or beast, every call echoing through the pines. I note the patterns of migration, the quiet struggle of a deer nursing its fawn, the fierce grace of a fox slipping through twilight. I write in the margins how it feels to witness each moment, as though capturing not just a fact, but a fragment of my own awakening. I have become someone who stops in the middle of a trail to watch a squirrel's bold leap from branch to branch, who pauses at dusk to marvel at the heron standing motionless in the creek, who kneels in the soft earth to feel its cool dampness, as though in that moment I become part of the woodland I once considered merely my hunting ground. I breathe differently now, aware of every inhalation, every exhalation that carries pollen, pine resin, the promise of rain. But most of all, I have learned that animals do not merely survive. They remember, they return. They are capable of gratitude in a way I had never imagined. The mother lynx, once on the brink of death, came back not powerless, but triumphant, with a legacy of 2 kits who learned from her courage. They remembered the kindness I showed her, and in turn, they showed me what compassion truly means. When the adolescent stood between me and the wolf, I felt the full weight of their memory. She remembered the day I spared her mother's life, and she repaid me with her own. I have told a few people in town that I have given up hunting. Some scoff, unable to see the logic or the magic in my choice. They ask if I've lost my mind, if I still believe a wild creature would ever think to thank a human. I tell them the story, halting at the part where the kits pressed their small faces against my boots. I watch their eyes widen when I describe how the mother blinked at me before slipping away into the shadows, and some whisper that I'm poetic, others say I'm foolish. But I know what I saw. My days now are filled with the slow work of the land. I tend a small garden where I grow vegetables for the local market. I leave patches of wildflower and milkweed untended, a sanctuary for bees and butterflies. I build birdhouses and check them each morning, marveling at the chirping tenants. I hollow out a fallen log to serve as a bat roost, because bats too deserve safe havens. I do these things not for profit, not for praise, but because I learned that every creature, no matter how small, carries a story worth preserving. I speak less now. My speech was once measured in tales of pursuit, the thrill of the chase. Now my words are quieter, laced with reverence. When I see a doe with her fawn, I offer a soft greeting, as though acknowledging an old friend. When I wander at twilight and hear the call of an owl, I lift my gaze to the treetops and nod in silent greeting. It feels fitting to commune with these voices of the wild, for they taught me the truth, that life is not a commodity, but a miracle. Sometimes, standing at the edge of the clearing where she first met my gaze, I speak aloud to her memory. I confess my fears, my regrets, my hopes. "Thank you," I whisper. "I'm sorry," I murmur, and in the hush that follows, I like to imagine her spirit, old, wise, forgiving, lingering among the pines. I know the lynx of my youth has aged beyond return, but her lessons endure in every rustle of leaf and flicker of tail. I have come to believe that the greatest gift we can give the wild is our respect, our wonder, our willingness to listen. And perhaps, in rare moments, that gift is acknowledged. Perhaps another creature, somewhere in the dim hush of the forest, senses our gratitude and responds in kind. I cannot prove it scientifically. I have no measurements, no data charts, only the echo of her amber eyes. I pause now by the porch railing, my hand resting on the worn wood as spring light filters through budding branches. I close my eyes and breathe deeply. Earth, pine, hope. My heart is full with the echo of everything I have learned. In my mind's eye, I see her one last time, solitary, serene, stepping back into the fold of ancient trees. They say such things do not happen. They say the wild does not remember kindness. They say we cannot know the hearts of beasts. But I know what I saw. I know what I felt. And even now, I cannot shake the memory of her forgiving gaze. Such a thing cannot happen, I whisper to the empty air, but I saw it with my own eyes, and to this day I still cannot believe. She forgave me. If your heart is full of wonder, type "Nature is wiser than us."